Today we're going to talk about the important topic of resiliency as it relates to our oncology nurses. I'm Christy Longnecker. I'm the Vice President of Siteman Cancer Center. I have with me today Eileen McDarr. She is the Chief Energy Officer for the Resiliency Group. She brings with her some straightforward strategies and mindsets on how to handle the professional and personal demands that nurses face. And she's also authored some books, such as Your Resiliency GPS, a guide for growing through work life, ranked #1 of the world's top 30 communications for professionals. Welcome, Eileen. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So I have a few questions for you. What is resiliency, and why is it so important for our nurses here at Siteman Cancer Center?
Well, first off, thank you for asking me that question, because I totally disagree with the dictionary definition of resiliency, which if I ask anybody what's resiliency mean, they say, well, it means to bounce back. And in the dictionary it says some object compressed under stress that when the stress is gone, it goes back to its original position. Well, that's fine, Christy, if we were steel or a willow tree. But I think for the human system, resiliency is not about bouncing back. It's about growing through challenge or opportunity. You see, as human beings, we can't go back. Yesterday is gone. I cannot redo anything. But what are the lessons that I could take from it, and how can I grow wiser and stronger through the event? And I also think that resiliency is a life skill. It isn't one of those things that you go, oh no, this life is terrible, I better become resilient. We need resiliency all the way through. So I like to think of it actually as presilience. If you think about it, preemptive resilience. Just like you give kids booster shots to spike up the antibodies, that's what presilience is how do I constantly spike up the antibodies that help me become resilient.
Eileen, if these are life skills, like you mentioned, for our nursing teams, and a lot of our nurses are younger, so how do we make sure, what are some tools or tips we can give them to help them in their daily lives and with their professional work?
Well, I think first and foremost, you said, why is this important for us as nurses? Yes. I'm seeing a huge uptake in burnout among medical professionals, not just nurses. But then we superimpose upon it the type of nursing you do for oncology, which is really different than if I was working in pediatrics or I had an orthopedic place. So resiliency for these nurses takes two things. One, it is dealing with patients that are very sick, and oftentimes long-term, and their families. So that puts tremendous strain upon the nurse herself or himself. The other part is that because it is a strain, what can I learn to do that helps me handle the stress, which is what it is, because there's good stress and bad stress. So it's the bad stress. So I think your question is, what could we do to help our young nurses? First off, we need to talk about it.
Very simple.
We can't pretend that this isn't going to happen. So if I had some new young nurses coming to me, I would want to put them with some of my more seasoned nurses and say, let me tell you what to experience here and how to take this in a way that is compassionate, grace-filled, but also allows you to take care of yourself.
So we need to create some sort of mentorships, I think, for our newer nurses, perhaps.
I think it's mentorship, and it's also in the moment. It's how do we support each other? So if you were my mentor, I can't wait until you come. Say you have 2 days off and I'm not going to see you. We need to support each other to know that this is challenging, good work that we do. And I think one of the ways we support each other is to really check in. How you doing? You look really kind of worried. Can I help you? And we actually ask, how do we help each other? And we also must learn how to ask for help for ourselves.
So it's some sort of self-awareness that we need to be aware, right? And it's the mindfulness that we need to have with our team members as we work with, as colleagues. So
as colleagues. And it's really, when we say self-aware, oftentimes I think we can fool ourselves. Well, everybody else can do this, and I can work 12 hours here, and then I can go home and do 45 more hours with my family and my kids. And oh, by the way, I said, yes, I will chair the PTA meeting. And so we have to stop and say, what is it that I'm doing to myself? And what is it, here's the other critical part, what is it that I am doing that will give me energy? Or what is it that I'm doing that depletes my resources?
A worry that I have is that if we get into nursing because we want to help We want to help people. We want to help our sick cancer patients. And I think what a few things that we can think about is, as we're thinking about resiliency, as we think about how we are resilient as individuals and within groups, that this impacts the kind of care delivery we have for our patients. Is that true?
Absolutely. I mean, if I come in to a patient's room and I am exhausted, burned out, stretched so thin I'm almost transparent, I got to tell you, that's not going to be a good patient experience, because I have lost my patients. Mm-hmm. So this idea of learning how to become calmer, more present. I'm very big about how do I show up now, because I think sometimes we don't show up now.
You're speaking of our team members or the leaders of the teams?
Everyone.
Everyone. Mm-hmm.
Everyone. Because we all do this. Our brains have us one of two places. We're either back there with, oh, I could have, would have, should have, why didn't I do this? Holding on to grudges. Oh yeah, I have to go take care of him. I remember when I took care of him. I'm not going to take care of him again. Or we're ahead of ourselves. We're going, oh my, what will happen if? And we worry. We worry about it. In the meantime, we just miss the only place of power that we have is, how do I show up? Right here, right now.
Part of showing up is also trying to model that for those who don't know how to do it.
Absolutely.
So modeling the behavior, I think, is also key. Would you think?
Oh, absolutely. And that means so that if I'm a nurse leader, I got to be very self-aware about what I do.
Right.
Because I might be modeling the wrong kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think in this, there's a tremendous amount of communication and dialogue that is needed all the way. So not only with bedside, with the infusion, with the doctors, so how do we talk about what's going on and give me some other ways of responding? Because that's another trick about resiliency, is I need to discover multiple ways of responding to a situation. See, if I only have one way, it's kind of like, well, if what's that expression? If you see everybody as, if everybody is a nail, the only thing you have is a hammer, you go like this, something like that. But how can I help me find different ways of responding that allow me to feel more powerful, more in control? And part of the other thing is, what is it that I can control? I cannot control the state of that patient.
Yes, which is true.
I can't.
And that is the hardest thing to accept.
And you said something that was very wise, that we got into nursing because we care.
Yes.
You don't get in here for the big bucks or the vacation that's going to be in Tahiti or any place else. So because we care, oftentimes we can overcare. And learning to step back. I noticed myself doing this with my mother when I cared for my mother, was that I wanted everything to be perfect for her, and she was making choices that were not good choices. And I realized at some point in time, I had to let that go. That she will craft the life that she wants to lead, and the best I can do is to be present for her in the place where she is at that time.
Meeting them at that moment.
At that moment, yeah. We talked about showing up. I don't know who said this line, so you can quote yourself if you wish, but it was that yesterday is a canceled check, tomorrow is a promissory note. Only today is negotiable. So how do I show up today?
Thank you, Eileen, for all your time today.
You're welcome.